I work with CMA small systems for the last 20 years. And what we're actually doing, we're building core financial infrastructures. I think last 15 years, mostly it was concentrated on domestic level. So we were building high value payments as well as the fast payment systems. During last 5 years, the trend started to change. So we moved to regional or even global levels, especially for fast payment systems, where those systems start to be used as the single point of access to send or receive money within the country. I think last 20-25 years, the central banks, national payment system, they start to move to electronic payments. Probably a little bit slower than commercial institutions. And it means those systems are relatively new, right? So the developed countries, they build those infrastructure last 20-25 years. The developing countries start to develop them from scratch or to update them significantly during last 10-15 years. So it means if we talk about the core infrastructure for developing country, what we see, most of them, they're quite modern. So it means built on the new technologies, they incorporate most of the security standards already. So that means secure APIs, they protect the central databases, they encrypt data, and they're trying to monitor them. And the funny thing, developed countries who actually were leading these innovations, they're a little bit behind. And I think right now they're starting to update their system. If we talk about the cross-border, mostly it's affect the fast payment system. You see the UK or Singapore, they implemented their fast payment system roughly 15 years ago. So now, technology-wise, I think they're a little bit behind developing countries, and they are improving their technology, including the security aspect, right? While the developing countries, they are, I would say they might be more advanced technology, but they are lagging behind regulation and the operational rules and practices that should be in place to ensure security of those solutions. So it's quite interesting situation that happens in the market. So the most of the countries, they establish fast payment systems, and then during last 5 years, multiple bilateral links were established. I think Malaysia is leading a number of bilateral links between the countries. Singapore is more famous, but the number of connections is less than Malaysia actually. And that's opening new challenges. So if you compare with other regions, right now, in terms of cross-border payments, on level of core financial infrastructure, the APAC is leading. So that's where the new challenges start to come from. So all those cross-border payments, they start to be faster, and they start to be more accessible to individuals, businesses, as well as fintech companies who provide the final solution to those individuals or corporate users. I think the main problem is caused by the fact that the number of cross-border transactions increased, become real time. So it means that we need data and we need real-time monitoring to be able to make any decision. Is it the fraudulent transaction related to any criminal activities as money laundering? So in the beginning, all those functions usually were pushed by regulators or the infrastructure operators to commercial banks. Were required, and they still require it, to actually work with every transaction, monitor them, check the clients. And it's quite difficult for them sometimes, because if they work through the central infrastructure, they might not get all the enough data from their counterparties. So it's changing, especially with implementation of new standards. But implementation of new standards like ISO 20022 open new vectors for attacks, because many infrastructure, including the solution for commercial banks, they're not ready for that. So it means they implement a middleware that's supposed to help them to integrate their core system with those national or global rails. And in between core banking system and those middlewares, there are potential weaknesses, because there might be some outdated protocol for the data exchange that are less protected and probably accessed by humans. And unfortunately, when we work with the central institution, the statistic about those haste, it's not usually public. But there are some public events like Bangladesh, there are some cases in Europe where exactly this middle part was used for attack, where the weak integration was attacked either from inside or from outside of organization. And that's what happened in Bangladesh specifically. So this middleware part, as I mentioned, the transaction, the number increased, they become online. Many of those organizations, they lack of real-time monitoring. So it gives possibility for the fraudsters, if the attack is well planned, to execute it and cover the real situation that happens. So the organization unable to react fast enough. And of course, with the growth of AI, then the deepfakes, attacks to the employees of those institutions or the end users, they start to increase. And here where those institutions start to think, of course, in many jurisdictions, they introduced new standards, right? They give the recommendation how the national regional infrastructure should be built and secured. As well, they start to think about centralized technology solutions to prevent the fraud. We see Malaysia National Fraud Portal, the recent announcement in Australia, where they're trying to incorporate the centralized solution that have access to all the data about those payments to fight with the fraud. So middleman attack, some insider attack, and especially with the support of deepfakes, they are growing. If you check developed markets, they might be a little bit slower in adoption of those new cross-border services. Like we see European Union, US, they mostly rely on some fintech solutions that might be quite modern. While in developing countries, they leapfrog and they start to use those central infrastructure to initiate the payment. That's why the vectors of attack and the organizations who potentially might be attacked are different in those regions. I think in developing countries, especially those who recently introduced those core systems, they might be potentially under the threat. That was not the case before. Unfortunately, in this specific area where government institutions are involved, even those attacks are happening, in most of the cases, the information is not published. We know from our clients that they are successfully blocked, mostly on infrastructure level. So we talk about the penetration of networks, penetration of the central banking infrastructure, much by cases of attempt when actually the infrastructure was breached. If we talk about high value payments that as well used for cross-border, most probably it's because it's very isolated systems, only limited number of participants, usually only commercial banks have access to it. Number of transactions is much lower, so it means the number of potential attack points is less. Second, as the number of transactions and the size of transaction is different, the manual monitoring is in place. Because unusual behaviors usually they catch by operators. That's what happened in Bangladesh. They tried to steal 1 billion. They succeed to steal 80 millions, right? For retail payment system, it's slightly different. There are no possibility for operator to monitor it in real time. And what we start to introduce as well as the operators in different countries, that's centralized monitoring facilities, including those that are incorporate AI and machine learning that are studying unusual behaviors in the payments. But right now, we don't see much cases. So we don't see much positive detection of those attacks. I have a feeling that this number will be increasing, and definitely those organizations need to take care about that proactively. They need to start to build those real-time monitoring systems, including those that are based on AI, because the amount of data that those operators are collecting, it's huge. the number of transaction amounts, the sender, receiver, including the information about your phone GPS location when you scan QR code and make your payments. All of this need to be analyzed in online mode. And of course, that's where we hope AI will help us. Yeah, right now, I think everybody talk about AI. It was a big hype around blockchain last 10, 15 years. We didn't see that it was adapted or changed much the core infrastructures. While for AI, we already see real life implementations for those centralized fraud prevention facilities on national level. So the AI is promising. Of course, now everybody talk about the quantum security because the quantum computing is developing. Not sure, is it just a hype at this point? Because so far there are no case when the existing cryptography was hacked already, but that's another topic that is very carefully studied by the central financial institutions. And we see it's not only those operators who start like Paynet in Malaysia, there are National Payment Corporation in Kazakhstan who already implemented those centralized systems. We start to see that networks, like I saw the Visa, MasterCard as well, because they have access to data to all the transaction in the network, they are able actually to catch using the AI all those fraud transactions. They have this tool now. Before it was the pre-configured rules and some very complicated algorithms that need to be developed to achieve that. AI can allow us to do it in an agile way. As of now, we of course see the implementation of some blockchain solution, especially of the last level of this financial market infrastructure ecosystem, right? So we see those stablecoin cryptocurrencies. Somehow they are both challenging the solution that were built by central banks before. Looks like definitely they provide technology. They're quite resilient to technology attacks. Of cases when the people were tricked and transferred the money to the wrong place. And if we talk about blockchain, that is distributed approach without centralized regulation, the question how to return the funds that were stolen, that become the big one. We see the latest cryptocurrencies hacked. Yeah, they can see the money, they see where they are, but they cannot do anything with that. So definitely blockchain gives us the possibility to build infrastructures that cannot be hacked on the technical level, but still the fraudsters can use different keys to trick the people, and there are no regulations. What we see in our space, potentially this technology might be used to build the second ledger that is unpenetratable and then might be used actually to compare your database with the blockchain database to make sure the traditional database was not hacked, right? And it allows to do reconciliation. So if we talk about the FMIs and the technology right now, we don't think that the blockchain will replace that. Regulation is still a challenge, right? That's why I don't like them, but they should understand it's a very complex task to satisfy everybody and protect the individuals and the businesses in the country. But still, it was somehow addressed with the national regulation and the standards. Of the global cooperation, the problems how to sync those national standards, the regulation related to data processing, data storage, that's the huge challenge. For some cross-border initiative, we see that the legal part, including those regulation and standard about security, takes 10, 15 years to be settled. Like we see one of the recent developments in the Asia Pacific for the cross-border payment, that's the project Nexus. To design it in 2019. So it's right now, technology design and some discussion and cooperation between the regulation took roughly 6-7 years, right? They promised to go live in 2017. So it took them to design and it will took them a little bit more to build. The overall period is 10 years. So you see, that's a challenge. We don't have standards and recommendations that are applicable for security, but harmonization of those standards still not there. So It's the big change for everybody. Of course, you should invest to the technology, right? We see, unfortunately, for those core financial systems, it's the 10-15 year cycles of upgrade. So the system is implemented, next 10 years, it's adoption, very small improvement, and then again, full update of the technology, including the security components. I believe they should implement some more agile way of improving. So it should be continuous improvement of technology and security components as well. Some they have a good rules and regulation for that. Some of them no. And the second, we need the standards. Of course, now we have ISO 20022 for the message standards. It will be nice to have some standards for secure APIs, but it's really challenging. So most probably regional cooperation will give more results. Again, Nexus, I think they sit together, they talk with the industry, they talk with each other, and they're building something based on the result of those discussions. So the advice is very simple: to be open and agile. The world is changing. The cross-border payments are come to the central bank or national payment operator door. They need to be ready for that. So they cannot address this point every 10 years. It should be addressed regularly, every day. So they need to evolve all the time. Unfortunately, with technology, it's much easier than with regulations. Specifically for Asia, I think that fraud and scam are huge now, right? We see the governments and the financial sector are trying to address them. Sometimes it's not really technology. We see a lot of very simple tools that the banks are applying, like you freeze your account, nobody can touch it. That's the old school of doing things. So like everything is sealed, nobody can steal it. But at the same time, they start to see the regulations. I think Singapore, Australia are progressing in the regulation related to AI and the centralized fraud management. If for the real life implementation, we see Malaysia National Fraud Portal. They claim that now, after the fraud case was identified, they can locate and retrieve the funds or log the funds within 30 minutes. So that's, I think, is a very interesting experience. And I think the solution itself based on the machine learning and AI, so it's quite an advanced one. I feel probably in the region, it's one of most interesting cases. Blockchain, I'm a bit skeptical, honestly. The technology is perfect, but it's not the silver bullet for everything. We don't see much adoption that allow us to increase security of those core national financial infrastructure on national or regional levels. We need something that will allow us to share data between counterparties. In this regard, I think technology there, it's more a regulation thing. I'm a bit cautious about this quantum computing, because if there will be breakthrough similar to AI, then we will face a situation when even blockchain solution will be threatened by this technology. So we need to be prepared for the future level of cryptography. So I would say two. So we need AI to analyze the data, detect the fraud. It might help people by scammer, the deep fakes, even phone calls or SMS. I saw some commercial banks that start to introduce like a virtual assistant to their app that might be enabled in your phone, and it will control all the calls that you receive. The phone give you the warning, like looks like that's the fraudster who texts calling you. It might help the individual of businesses to be more careful with the transaction that they execute. So, but again, it's based on the analysis of data, and again, that's where machine learning help us. So finally, this technology mature enough to help us with that. Big bank developing for last decades, they have a enormous amount of legacy technology, and it's really hard for them to update it, but they need to do that. Probably cooperation with the fintech might help us. So when some services that currently mostly provided by the commercial banks might be, can I say, outsourced to fintechs who might be owned by commercial banks at the same time. It might help to improve technology and solve this legacy problem. Right now, more than half of commercial banks, I have a feeling they're very much behind. Can put this everything on the top layer, nice AI assistance, but if the core technology is not there, it will be very hard for them to address all those technology issues.